as promised, staying with us, Michael Reagan. And we appreciate the fact that Michael is with us now. Michael, we talked before the break about the Reagan doctrine. Obviously, as John Bogman made mention, the Wall Street Journal op-ed, the vice president, the former vice president, again, makes mention of your father and your father's statement that simple-minded appeasement and wishful thinking are a betrayal of our past and the squandering of our freedom. So that's what Vice President Cheney had to say. Michael, we take a look at someone you knew as your dad, in addition to being President of the United States. Do you buy that interpretation of the Reagan doctrine from Vice President Cheney?
Well, you know, the Reagan doctrine too. Remember, we don't. There's a lot of things we don't have today. We don't have those eyes and intel, and you know this, you know, on the ground that we used to be able to have, to really get the intel of what's going on in country, so we could take care of things like my father had. So much has happened since my father was president, you know, back in 1980s. And it was interesting, you know, on his first day in office, first Monday in office, back on January 26th of 1981, the first meeting he had in the Oval Office was with the CIA, FBI, you know, all the intel agencies to get a hold and, if you will, on them to find out what's going on around the world so those things can be, in fact, taken care of. We're not doing that anymore. We're really not. And, you know, we look at Israel and we get mad at Israel because Israel's trying to find a way to defend itself. And we have left ourselves basically in the lurch. You can't walk away from the world and not expect these things to happen. The reality of it is the world looks to the United States of America for leadership. And when we are not leading, the world goes into absolute turmoil. And that's what we are in today, because there's no strong leadership, not only in the White House, there's no strong leader in the world. In fact, the only leader in the world right now is a guy named Vladimir Putin, who's basically running the world as we see it today. And we need to take back the leadership of the world so the world feels better and feels safer.
Michael, as you mentioned that, and you mentioned the role of American leadership, there are those who say, yeah, we can lead, but we can't afford to be the world's policeman. Is there a distinction where there can be American leadership, where America can fill the void and the vacuum, but at the same time not be involved in what history has come to call, quote, police actions like Korea or Vietnam or perhaps most recently in Iraq?
Well, it's letting people know there's a support system. Remember, this president, the first thing he did upon becoming president of the United States was take away the missile defense system of Poland, the Czech Republic, and what have you. So what you did is you left them open to whatever Vladimir Putin may in fact want to do. I think a lot goes back to that quote we heard during the last presidential campaign when the president, speaking to the president, wink wink, of Russia, saying, tell Putin to wait till after the election. There's a lot more I could do after the election. That's not the position you want your president of the United States in. You want him in a position to where he is respected around the globe. And I think you have a sociopath to an extent who's trying to become everybody's friend of the world. And the world doesn't want a friend. The world wants to respect a leader. And if they respect you, then you can talk about friendship later on and go on a date and have dinner.
We are joined now, Michael, by Dr. Walid Phares, Middle Eastern expert. And as we are trying to determine the future, Dr. Phares, we appreciate your time and attention. You have written about the so-called Arab Spring fast becoming the Arab Winter. Dr. Phares, with Secretary of State John Kerry now visiting Baghdad, what is your assessment of the current situation?
Well, I've been with many in the Arab media this morning and speaking with lawmakers and experts in Baghdad and Cairo and other places. There is a sense of disorientation, meaning our friends in the region feel that the administration has actually no plans. That's why Secretary Kerry has been sent to the region. Had we had plans, we would have applied those plans. In the sense that in Iraq, we knew that ISIS, known also as Daesh, the Islamist jihadi organization, has been training. Now there's a new scandal, brewing, which is that some of these elements have been trained by us before they become Daesh. So there's a lot of confusion. On the other hand, trying to help the Iraqi government of Mr. Maliki in a strategic way will be the equivalent of associated with Iran. So either way, a strategic action by the United States without changing our policy in Washington first is going to be catastrophic at the end of the day.
And Walid, that leads me right to my next question here. We did not hear a glowing endorsement from the president speaking about Nouri al-Maliki, and there's been some speculation that either behind the scenes or maybe even not publicly, the administration is trying to push for a change in leadership over there. From what you're hearing from the Arab media and your sources, how much legitimacy is that, and how long do you expect Nouri al-Maliki to be around?
Well, the Arab moderate governments, that would be Jordan immediately, because Jordan now is mobilizing, and of course Saudi, Kuwait, Bahrain, UAE, all of them are putting pressure on the United States and on Mr. Malik to do the very simple, logical thing. If he wants international support against ISIS, against the Al-Qaeda #2 in the region, he needs to widen the scope of his government, have all Sunni moderates, the Kurds, the Christians, everybody in. He's not doing this. He is not changing that government because he's under the pressure of the Iranian regime. So we find ourselves in a position now that we have backed a government which, as of 2011, has been the partner of the Iranians, cannot change to meet our requirement and the requirement of our moderate allies so we can isolate Daesh. We cannot fight on two fronts at the same time.
I want to go back to Michael Reagan because, Michael, you made mention of a column you penned for our parent website, Newsmax.com, and I wanted to provide you the opportunity to offer a little amplification on where you see us right now. And indeed, the column is simply entitled, "Don't Repeat Past Mistakes in Iraq." Again, some amplification on what it is you had to write at Newsmax.com.
I think Walid, who he and I have known each other for many years, had him on my radio show when I was doing radio. I mean, really talked about it. The fact is, right now, there's no leadership, there's no plan. That's the mistake you make. You can't just go in and not have a plan, and we don't have a plan. We don't have an entry plan. We don't have an exit plan. We have nothing. We're trying to stop the bleeding that's going on. We need more than a Band-Aid here, and we need to understand where we want to go, how we want to get there. And at this point in time, I don't think anybody on the planet knows what the plan might in fact be. You have a president who doesn't want to be there. You have John Kerry who doesn't know what to do once he gets there. And again, that does not bode leadership. And if you're not leading, then you have what you have today. You have turmoil, in that part of the world. And that's what we have. I said many years ago to my good friend, who was the most decorated soldier on the planet, Colonel David Hackworth. I asked him one time, I said, when's there going to be peace in the Middle East? He says, when they're all dead. And you're getting to the point where you're thinking that might be true.
It's a sobering thought, Michael. Walid, getting back to the here and now. Anything, and I hate to use the analogy of a Band-Aid, but what on earth, if you are prioritizing what the United States needs to do right now, we've got about a minute and a half left, what would you suggest?
We have been advising for many years in Congress and, of course, suggesting to the administration to do many things. For the last 3 years, they have not done that. The change has to be done here in Washington. We cannot do much in the region. Michael has a great point. We cannot do Band-Aid. We need to change foreign policy here, have a new consensus, no more partnership with the Muslim Brotherhood, stop that deal with the Iranians, work with the partners on the ground, such as the Kurds, the minorities, the moderates, and then we could have a plan. With this policy, we can't even have a plan, unfortunately.
Well, it's a sobering situation. Michael Reagan, Dr. Walid Phares, we thank you for your time and for your perspectives, and we look forward to you joining us again real soon here on America's Forum.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Well, interesting take there when you hear from Walid Phares, a well-respected expert on the situation, saying that the policy in Washington needs to change, the complete opposite of what we hear coming from this administration, that it's up to the Iraqi people to defend themselves.
Well, it is up to the Iraqi people, but as always in any endeavor, sad to say in terms of foreign policy, at least in recent memory, there's always been a fair amount of domestic politics involved. We would love your take on what is transpiring. If you want to tweet us your comments, you can do so at Newsmax TV, #America's Forum. There's also email and Facebook, and we're coming right back.